Welcome back. 2024. It's already February. I did take a little bit of time off in December into January. Thank you all for your support on the recent Radio Espial features. We are back for episode 41, and this is a timeline and in-depth case profile. www.radioespial.com, but you're very likely watching this on our YouTube channel, Radio Espial Mick Rooney. As always, a like, a subscribe and a share of wherever you're seeing this is appreciated. That's all that done and dusted. You won't hear that again. Let's get on with this. By the way, for this case, Kieran McConnell from Irish Cold Cases and Ireland's Vanishing Triangle will be joining us once again. It's one that's been actually requested by quite a number of people over the Christmas and January period, and I actually noticed that the anniversary of this case was coming up. I think it's 27 years. This case goes back to 1997. You can already see there. It's Ciara Breen, and thank you to the subscribers who suggested this. We have already been looking at this case in right through summer to winter of 2023, and it was one of those we were looking at doing early on this year. There will be plenty more. We'll probably be doing an awful lot more timeline analysis this year. We had quite a backlog of features to get through. That's done and dusted. Now let's go straight to this case. Okay, the summary of this case. Ciara Breen, age 17, from Dundalk, County Louth, Ireland, went missing on the 13th of February 1997 on Bachelor's Walk, where she lived with her mother in a small terraced house. She was last seen by her mother Bernadette, who said at the time that they both had gone to bed just after midnight. That day, they'd gone to a local café for evening dinner and then returned home. According to Bernadette, she was due to get the results of a biopsy, I think it was, the following morning from the Blackrock Clinic in Dublin, and Ciara was worried about this. The two had a short conversation on Bernadette's bed that evening before going to sleep just after midnight. Now, we think it's around just after 2 a.m. Bernadette got up to go to the bathroom and discovered Ciara was not in her room, nor was she in her own bedroom. Mother and daughter often fell asleep together in the same bed, and Ciara would later then move to her own room then. It was not the first time Ciara had snuck out during the night. She had left a window on the latch on the bottom storey of the house, and it is believed she did so that she could climb back in. It is considered the most likely scenario in Ciara's case that she decided to leave her home to attend a pre-planned meeting with someone that night. This was later verified by close friends of Ciara when interviewed by Gardaí. That's Gardaí Irish Police. In 2014, two credible witnesses came forward with sightings of Ciara from the night she disappeared, and in 2015, a man was arrested but released without charge. The male suspect was arrested again in 2017 for an unrelated drink driving charge and died of a drug overdose while in custody. Ciara Breen was a normal 17-year-old finding her way in life in the satellite town of Dundalk, some 50 miles north of Dublin in the border county of Louth, Ireland. Ciara was born in March 1979 to her mother Bernadette and father. At a very early age, her parents separated, and her father moved to the United States in the 1980s. Her mother Bernadette raised Ciara alone, returned to her own parents' home for some years before finally settling in this terrace house in Bachelor's Walk, Dundalk, just around the corner from her parents' home on St Mary's Road, I think it was. Now, Ciara grew up in Dundalk with her mother. She was schooled there, but she had little or no contact with her natural father from there on. She was quiet and self-conscious as a child. She did experience a degree of school bullying, and by her mid-teenage years became very body conscious. She left school early, at the age of around 16, in 5th year, so she didn't complete the final year of her schooling. And she and Bernadette had embarked on a holiday trip to Disneyland in the USA. I think that was the previous year. It did seem to settle Ciara, and she began to make more friends on a return to Dundalk. Her social circle was certainly expanding. In early 1997, Bernadette had organised a dental appointment for Ciara to address her concerns about her frontal teeth and self-confidence. She was becoming a young lady and had already decided she wanted to pursue a career in makeup and beauty. While she was still doing a computer course, this is what Ciara decided she wanted to do. Approaching her 18th birthday that March 1997, her mother was already planning another surprise visit back to the USA and Disneyland for Ciara. However, in the early morning hours of the 13th of February 1997, Ciara once again snuck out of the house to meet someone and has never been seen again. Okay, that's the broad summary outline of our case. Let's join Kieran McConnell and let's really start getting into a deep dive of this case. Okay, Kieran has joined us. Kieran, first time for 2024. We're back. Another timeline to go.
Delayed Happy New Year.
Delayed Happy New Year. Yeah, we had an awful lot to get through to cover with the features.
And there was some news coming out as well. The Sophie Tuscan, the Plantier case.
Yeah. So there's been an awful lot happening in a couple of other cases that we've been covering as well. So we thought we'd concentrate on that first before we got to the Ciara Breen case. And I had a number of people suggest this case to me. It was in the back of our it was in the back of our minds, even though it was from 1997. But the fact that her 27-year anniversary of disappearance is coming up on February the 13th, I thought was appropriate that we cover this case.
Yeah.
You've seen the full timeline. Without giving too much away, your initial thoughts?
Well, I think, as I suppose anyone that knows the case, there is obviously a clear suspect, but I suppose it doesn't get much coverage anymore. This case really, but it says 27 years, so it's actually a good thing that we're covering it. So put some, I suppose, new material out about the case,
Yeah, and I would hope in the coming fortnight that we probably will start to hear a little bit more about it coming up.
And also, it kind of gets I always think it kind of gets overlooked in this case a bit, not intentionally or anything, but just how young she was, 17,
Yeah, 17, yeah. And again, it's not the first 16, 17, 18-year-old we've talked about on cases like this.
Yeah.
All right, let's start with the timeline then. We've already gone through the initial summary. We're just going to touch on some basic details that I did at the top of the program. So we're in early 1997. Ciara Breen, age 17, and her mother Bernadette have been living in a small 2-storey front-facing street house on Bachelor's Walk in Dundalk for about a year, despite relocation from Bernadette's parents' house in nearby St Mary's Road. Mother and daughter in their own space have developed a close bond. Ciara was described by our tutor Rosalind Bishop as shy, not streetwise, not necessarily gullible, but she said she did have a trusting nature. Despite her own previous health issues, Bernadette is beginning to see her teenage daughter blossom and find her feet after leaving school. Ciara has an up-and-coming dental appointment to address some long-standing concerns affecting her self-confidence. And I think for any teenager that's quite a common thing. If there's a physical feature, it could be teeth, it could be ears, it could be spots, anything, it can affect their confidence. Bernadette, believing her daughter had begun to settle, starts making plans to take her away on another Disneyland visit to the USA in late spring. It's to be a birthday surprise for Ciara the following month, March. Ciara's birthday was actually in March, her 18th birthday in March 1997. However, Bernadette learns from neighbours that a man in his mid-30s, local to the area, had been hanging around the area close to their home and known to her daughter. Not realising Bernadette was at home, one day he attempts to call for Ciara and Bernadette confronts him outside her home. Neighbours provide her more details on the local man, and she begins to realise why episodes of her daughter sneaking out of the house have begun to increase once again. She warns her daughter about her behaviour. Unknown to Bernadette, this man has also been hanging around the local café and streets where Ciara meets her local friends. He has been spotted meeting her at the local Chipper Cafe in the evenings and the college where she studies for her computer course. Her friends are becoming both uneasy but intrigued by her association with this local man. Ciara confides in only a few of her closest friends. Now this video insert you're going to hear, this is Bernadette Breen. She's going to talk about the background of her relationship with Ciara together, coming up to her disappearance. Just to cite this was from a 2012 Dundalk FM interview, and it's quite frank. It's one of the frankest interviews that Berna gave. When we come back, then we're really going to start digging into the timeline.
Tell us, I suppose, on the 13th of February back in 1997 is when you became one of these, as what Jenny called
forgotten. Yeah,
the forgotten, because we hear the names and we think of the names, but it's the family members who become, I suppose, they do become the forgotten ones. First of all, what we want you to do is tell us a wee bit about your daughter.
Ciara Breen was my world. She was a funny, lovely, kind, loving girl. She had her moments like the rest of them. I'm not going to say she didn't. She did.
I was going to say you were describing the perfect child.
No. She had her moments. Believe me, she did. But I would say in the almost 18 years that I had Ciara Breen, if there was 4 months that I would say I wish I could change those 4 months, she wasn't my Ciara in those 4 months. You know what I mean? But that's over the full 18 years, and I don't think that's a bad thing to say.
Bernadette, can you describe your relationship with your daughter?
Very open. A very open, very loving one. Like, I always told her never to be afraid to tell me anything. And I said, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, Ciara. It all depends on what you say. I might lose and start shouting, and you know, but I will calm down, and when I do calm down, I will be on your side. But you're going to have to give me 5 minutes if it's bad to have a rant. I always told her that.
So would you describe it as a good relationship?
I thought we had a very open relationship. Okay. We could talk about anything. We really, really could. One example. Shortly before Ciara disappeared, I went to collect her from her night out, and she came in. She always had her wee sambo, that's a sandwich, when she came in, and this particular night she didn't want it. I said, okay. She said, well, I'm going to bed, Mum, night. I said, okay. I said, I'm just going to sweep it, fireplace and everything. And she came back down and she says, Mum, and I went, yes, Pat. And she goes, no, nothing's okay. I'll talk to you in the morning. I went, okay. I was kind of busy and I wasn't, you know. So I went to go down to the kitchen to turn off the light. And she was at the top of the stairs, and she goes, "Mom," like this. And I went, "What is it? I know there's something. What is it?" And she said, "I had a Ritz. I don't drink. I don't." And I went, what's a Ritz thing? "Oh, Mommy, it's a beer. It's like a lager." I went, "That's okay." I thought drugs.
Yeah.
I thought she took something. So she went, "Are you sure?" I went, "Ciara, you're nearly 18. I said, just
So
because I don't drink, I don't expect you not to. Just be very, very careful." And she ran down the stairs and hugged me and said, "Thanks, Mum."
Okay, so you were able to, she told you about the first drink that
Yeah.
you took. So that is an example of the type of relationship that you had with
Yeah.
Ciara. So it was quite
It was open.
And she did something that, say, you don't necessarily do. You don't drink, but she did, and you didn't have an issue. You were able to discuss it with her
Yes.
openly,
Yeah.
as most parents do. Most parents have. That's what you would generally call a good relationship.
Open.
Yeah. Now, can you tell us about the events leading up to her disappearance?
Ciara, a year before, had fallen in with, I don't like to say a certain crowd, but she did.
Did you like them?
No, it's not that I didn't like them. They were too streetwise for her.
Mhm.
You know, Ciara had no street smarts. She hadn't. She was overprotected growing up, which was my fault.
Was she an only child?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And her dad wasn't there, so I put everything into her, you know. I stopped going out. Everything I bought, everything I did, everything I went was all geared towards her. I was always there. The poor wee devil never had a chance to get street smarts. You know what I mean? She was protected. I was there the whole time.
But
And that was probably
Can I just
wrong.
say something? You said there, a word that you used there was fault. You said that was my fault. I mean, looking after your child is not a fault.
No, but you can overprotect, I think, and I think I did. We get away from the crowd bit, but I thought I had her away from them. Obviously, I hadn't.
Kieran, before we go into the Wednesday, February the 12th, which is the day before, kind of the evening, as it were, before the events. Any initial thoughts?
No, just listening to the interviewer there, the guy in it was quite frank, wasn't he? The way he kind of.
Yeah, I kind of find that sometimes with local and regional, you know, I'm not expecting them to be 100% national and international proficient, but yeah, he was certainly at times a little overbearing in it, and I much rather hear the family member or the interviewee just get on with it and let them speak, rather than, I'm not saying he was judging her, but, you know, jumping in and saying, "Oh, you shouldn't feel like that," or, well, the woman is telling you how she feels. That's her testimony, you know. It's not for you to say that she should or shouldn't feel that way, you know. But look, okay.
She came across Bernadette Breen. She came across very well, didn't she?
No, she did. A highly articulate, clearly highly articulate, educated woman.
Could you imagine, like, she had to deal with cancer at the same time that her daughter went missing? Like, that's unbelievable. Like,
Yeah, she had a lot on her plate, and even the previous years, obviously, with the breakup with Ciara's father leaving and going to the US, you know. So, you know, she had some, as a mother bringing up a teenage daughter, she had some tough years coming up to this time.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to start Wednesday, February the 12th, 1997. And there's obviously a relevance to this image you're seeing here. This is the Roma restaurant in Dundalk. It's on Park Street. And the relevance of it is, in the early evening, Bernadette and Ciara visited the Roma restaurant. It's another treat for mother and daughter. The pair are at their closest ever. Bernadette discusses the impending results of her cancer scare check the following day. That's at the Blackrock Clinic. Ciara is concerned about her mother, but Bernadette reassures her daughter, understandably. Bernadette has arranged for her dad, that's Ciara's granddad, to drive her to Dublin's Blackrock Clinic to get the results. She reassures Ciara that everything will be fine and she will be back that afternoon. So she's referring to the following day. The pair on the evening of Wednesday the 12th, return to their house on Bachelor's Walk around 6:45 p.m. Later, together, mother and daughter watched the movie Bad Boys airing on TV. I think Ciara was also, during and after the meal, was in a rush to get home because she was a big fan of Home and Away. I think if people remember that soap opera at the time. Yeah, I think it was an Australian soap opera. You know, all the teenagers were kind of watching it. Yeah,
it was on at 6:30 every day. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So she was eager to get home and catch the end of that. We know that around 12:25 a.m. We're into now the very early hours of the Thursday morning. So at 12:25 a.m. both have retired to bed. Bernadette is still feeling anxious about the following day. She's trying to obviously reassure her daughter that everything will be fine. So in the early hours of that Thursday, around 1:50 a.m. so Bernadette has kind of been sleeping for a little while, but she's still not fully into a sleep. She wakes to go to the toilet. She looks into her daughter Ciara's upstairs bedroom. The bed is still made in neat and Ciara is not there. She checks the rest of the house, going downstairs to the living room and the kitchen, thinking that, you know, once again Ciara's went back downstairs just to, you know, binge and watch more TV. She does notice one aspect, and that's that the lounge window is partially ajar, and she's sure she closed it and locked it when they both went to bed earlier. Now, in this picture, if you can make it out, that blue square that you see, that is actually the window, and you can see it's a front facing house. So you clamber out that window and you're straight out onto the street front. Now, Bernadette,
like a car right there, and then
it could be to pick somebody up straight in. You'd hardly know at that hour of the night. Someone would hardly notice unless they were walking down the street.
Yeah.
She knows the clothes Ciara was wearing that evening were not in her bedroom, and that was a black leather jacket, dark blue jeans, a wine-coloured sweatshirt, and a very unique T-shirt, which had a sort of a series of bodyguards. And in the centre, it was Ciara's own face. It's kind of like one of those special T-shirts you can go into a shop and get printed up if you have the images that you want to use. And she wore this as kind of like an undergarment, and that for a predator would only be known to them. It wouldn't be something on display, as it were. Remember, this is early hours of February the 13th. It's cold. This is not, you're not going to walk out in a T-shirt. You're going to be well wrapped up. Ciara also wore a distinctive Disneyland Mickey Mouse square watch from the previous holiday visit. I have seen a number of iterations online and in news articles of this watch, and I'm telling you now, it's not the watch that's been shown in those articles. It's actually very hard to find because it's a limited edition watch that her mother bought her as a gift when they were previously in the United States visiting Disneyland, and it depicts Mickey Mouse and the hands, and she loved this watch and she wore it all the time. Now later, Bernadette, during that morning, she sits up waiting for her daughter, just effectively, where were you, what's going on here? But she will later also confirm to Gardaí that Ciara's passport and her daughter's only money deposit access, which was a credit union book, are also present in the house. So Ciara didn't take them. So moving now to Thursday afternoon, February the 13th. Bernadette returns by car with her father to Dundalk from the Blackrock Clinic. She finally, as she's getting out of the car, reveals to her dad that Ciara has been missing since the previous evening and hadn't returned in the early hours of that morning. But she assumes that on her return to Bachelor's Walk, Dundalk, all will be well and Ciara will be back home with the fire lit, and as they, and she'll discuss what happened the previous night and probably have an excuse for, why she disappeared out and what have you.
Yeah, but I'd say once the fire wasn't lit and she wasn't
The
there when she
fire,
got home,
there was fire,
it
it
was all
wasn't lit,
on
there
her.
was no Ciara
Yeah,
there, and
more
that was the
serious.
moment then Bernadette rings Dundalk Garda Station around 6 p.m. and formally reports Ciara missing. Bernadette is now processing two anxieties, exasperated: the confirmed presence of cancer cells in her body by her doctor at the Blackrock Clinic, and that now her only child is missing. Let's hear more from Bernadette, and she's going to go through in quite finite details about that evening, about the early hours of that morning, and what transpired on this day. So let's take a listen to that.
The day leading up to when she disappeared, I come home from work, and myself and herself had gone to the Roma RT. She loved the Roma. And we were coming home, we were just coming down the road when she looked at her watch. Mum, home and away, home and away. And she ran down the road, I wasn't running, I was big. There's no bloody way I was running down the street. Heart attack at the front door. So she went in, she watched Home and Away. I did the bits and pieces. Then she went upstairs, she was doing something in her room. And she came down, and Chris O'Donnell was in a movie called Circle of Friends.
Right.
Now, she liked Chris O'Donnell from a movie she'd seen before. So Minnie Driver was in it as well. So she got her tape ready and she put it in. So we sat and we watched and we taped Circle of Friends. And then when she took the tape out, she wrote on it, I still have it: Circle of Friends. Ciara Breen owns this tape. Do not touch. If touched, it's at peril. In other words, don't tape over it.
Yeah.
And then we watched Bad Boys. So we went to bed, and she was lying on the bed with me, which I have to say is not unusual, because she usually did every night. We'd have a wee chat. Mm-hmm. I'd say 5 nights out of the 7 during the week. And she was lying there, and she just turned around to me. She said, are you worried about tomorrow, ma'am? And I went, not one bit.
Why? What was happening the next day?
I was going for cancer results.
Okay.
And she said, why are you? She said, well, if you're not worried, I'm not worried. And I said, don't worry about anything, pet. You're not getting rid of me that easy. Little realising how apt that sentence would become. But, just, Mum, do you want me to go with you? And I went, no, Ciara, you go on ahead to your course. I said, I'll go on ahead up and come home. I said, I'm not worried about it. Grandad's just coming up. I said, it'll be fine, don't worry. And she said, that I'll have the fire and all lit when you come home. I said, thanks very much. That's great. So she got off the bed. She gave me a kiss goodnight and a hug. And she stood at the door and she said, Mommy, don't you worry about tomorrow. Night-night. I love you. And I went, I love you too, sweetheart. Sweet Pea, actually. I always called her Sweet Pea. And I said, don't you worry about it. Have a good night's sleep. I will, Mum. See you in the morning. I love you. Night-night. That was it.
And that was the last words.
That was it. I have that whole... I'll never forget that conversation.
How many times, Bernadette, did you rerun that day in your head?
Every day, nearly. At certain stages during the day, it comes back. It never, ever leaves you. Like, I was very angry for about 9 years. I thought I hid it well, but I hadn't it hid as well as I thought I had it hid. I cried... But I hated to cry in front of people. I cried on my own. Right. Yeah. You know?
Which is worse.
It is worse. It's worse to keep it in.
Because you just said that you tried to hide it. I mean, you shouldn't have to hide something. People shouldn't have to always hide their emotions.
When I used to work in PJ Carroll's, the crowd I worked with were fantastic. You know what I mean? The bosses, everything. And they couldn't do enough, and they couldn't be nicer, and if I wanted to talk, they were there. But I tried my best to leave it at the door going in and pick it up on the way out. But I obviously wasn't successful because everybody knew and could see it in me. example, I used to walk down the road and home and or on the town, and I'd have my head kind of down. I wouldn't look left or right, because the people in this town, I will say this for them, they have been nothing but kind since Ciara disappeared. The majority of people. It was always, if they stop, they'll always just say, I know I don't know you, I don't want to upset you, but I know about your girl, and I'm very sorry, and I'm praying for her, or I light candles for her. That still goes on today.
How does that make you feel when someone stops you on the street, Bernadette?
At first, very angry. I felt like telling them to mind their own business and could they please leave me the hell alone. At first. But that was pure anger. That was pure. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know where I was. I didn't even know where I was going. Excuse me. What it was that woke me up. And my bathroom at the time was downstairs where I lived. And I got up and I looked into a room, which was nothing unusual, because Ciara as a baby had cot death syndrome. That's what they called it, where she would stop breathing on the outward breath, and if she hadn't have been caught in time, she would have been a perfectly healthy child that died.
Yeah.
You know.
Yes.
So all those attacks lasted right up till she was 1. She the last one the day before her first birthday. I never had another one. But I looked in, she was gone. I thought she was downstairs. Faggot, she's downstairs watching the television. So down I went to go to the bathroom, into the sitting room. But the sitting room window was open, where she went out the window so I wouldn't hear the front door. So she obviously had someone to meet or somewhere to go if she left the house at that time.
Had you any inkling?
None at all.
Was it the first time that she'd...
No, she had snuck out before. And she was caught.
She'd done it once before?
No, not once. The Gardaí told me that it had happened several times.
Right.
To meet this crowd.
Okay.
But there was another friend that used to stay over. That was nice, but...
So, okay,
She
she
was
had a nice
sneaking out
friend, but
too,
you
yeah.
fell in... They fell in
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
unsavoury company.
Unsavoury company. Ciara could never see the wrong in anybody. He was always, oh, God help her, mummy.
Did you
know
talk
this.
to her about that? Did you say, look, I don't like the company you're keeping?
I did.
And how did she respond?
Oh, God love them, mummy. They haven't got this, and, you know...
Did you say she
I
saw
like
the good
her.
in people?
She couldn't see the bad in anyone. She really couldn't see the bad in anyone.
I mean, the first time, or when you heard that, when she had snuck out before, I mean, when she came back home the first time, what was it like between mother and daughter then?
She was going anywhere she was left. When she was coming home, she was picked up. And when I was at work, she'd phone me before she went to school. She'd phone me when she came in lunchtime, and she'd phone me when she came home at 4 o'clock. And if she didn't get out that weekend.
Okay, so there were
That's
rules
where I
and
found,
regulations
when
in
I
place.
found out, yeah.
Yes.
But
Yeah. Oh, look, but teenagers...
when
still
I was
do it, they
asleep,
push things, yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
so...
Teenagers pushing the limits. Many teenagers, many adults now would say as a teenager, I snuck out once or
Yeah.
twice. At what point then do you realise, look, I need to report this to the guards? Or at what point do you realise, something's just not right here?
Well, as I say, that night I sat downstairs. She's caught. So I got myself ready in the armchair, and I sat in the armchair waiting for that leg to come through the window, but never came. So the next morning I got up and, well, I got off the chair and made a cup of tea, and I phoned Dublin to try and cancel, to cancel the appointment at Blackrock Clinic. And the receptionist said, Mrs. Breen, the doctor really needs to speak to you this morning. Please, if you can make it, please don't. So I knew going to Dublin that morning I had cancer. You know, there was no way I didn't. So I phoned Mum and I told her, and I asked her not to say anything to Dad because I didn't want Dad upset driving about Ciara and that. And so we went to Dublin. I hadn't reported to the guards. I wanted to give her the opportunity to be there when I came back.
Okay.
Have the fire lit, like she
Yes.
said. So we went to Dublin. I went into Mr. Lennon. He told me I had it. And I said, that's grand. I was grabbing my bag and going out. He goes, Mrs. Breen must sit down. He says, I'm after telling you, you have the cancer. I went, yeah, that's fine. He says, but I have to tell. So I sat back down and he told me. So it wasn't until I hit home and saw, he said, well, Ciara's not there when the lights weren't on. And I said, Dad, Ciara snuck out last night and things. So that's when we phoned.
We're now on to February the 14th. So we're a full day after Ciara has been reported missing. So Gardaí in Dundalk launched their inquiry and investigation. They quickly established the movements of Ciara before February the 13th, the early morning of her disappearance, and some of the events that happened before it. And within days, after multiple witness statements, a prime suspect is identified. Now, I'm not going to go into the minutiae of everything in this case. We're now going to jump to 1998. The Ciara Breen case is upgraded to murder on review. It becomes increasingly clear that Ciara has simply not just run away, and numerous reports of sightings of her days and weeks after her disappearance are eventually checked, and they are all eliminated.
Mick, I was going to say this must be one of the quickest cases they've ever upgraded to murder.
Yeah. When we think of all the cases we've covered, 5 years, 10 years,
30.
sometimes 20 years, 30 years, and then it's upgraded.
McCarroll was 30 years.
Yeah. This they moved in relative terms for a case fairly rapidly, but then I think they had a suspect, so they kind of knew where they were. In 1999, again, I'm not going to go into every single aspect of this case literally day by day. There's simply no need to. Much of the delays in the case occurred because the original case was escalated and taken away from Dundalk Gardaí and came under the remit of Operation Trace. That's essentially when it was accepted we're dealing with a murder case here. So there was a reason for that. Operation Trace was set up by former Garda Commissioner Pat Byrne to investigate the disappearance of 6 women who all vanished from the Leinster area between 1993 through to 1998. Its objective was, aside from solving the cases obviously, was to try and establish if a serial killer was involved in any of the cases and they were linked. Gardaí were also liaising with other operations into links of paedophilia, predators within the Dundalk area. The investigation into missing Ciara Breen became less about a serial killer, but more about the case being linked to predator rings of young children and teenagers at the time. So there's a pattern emerging here. Gardaí start to believe this man is at the centre of it. Now this image is taken of it, the man I refer to, who was a prime suspect. At the time he met Ciara and was known to Ciara Breen in his mid-30s. This image is taken actually many years later when he's in his 50s, in case you're wondering that this man doesn't look like he's in his 30s. The suspect, Liam Mullen, aged 35 at the time, a carer for an elderly relative, was formally arrested on the 10th of September 1999. He refused under caution to answer any questions into the disappearance of Ciara Breen. Mullen was released and the case continued to remain under the remit of Operation Trace for several more years. In reality, this should probably have never happened, as so often then cases with an established suspect were still dumped into Superintendent Pat Byrne's remit when they never belonged there, and much of this had to do with Mullen's own associations.
I was going to say, Mick,
yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, okay.
Just like Dundalk's quite a unique place in Ireland, like it's a border town and all that type of stuff. Like
It's
that
infamous border county, border town. Yeah.
Yeah, it's better. Like this case would be far more suited for local guards investigating it, just due to the dynamics of Dundalk. Like,
yeah, and knowing the history of a suspect and their movements, their associations.
Yeah, and that's why I was just gonna say one more thing, kind of on Dundalk. Like, to me, there's no chance that this could be some random person not from Dundalk coming into that town and abducting a young girl like that from the town. Like, it's not the type of place.
It ain't somewhere a stranger goes to get up to no good. Because you will get fingered straight away by the local.
Ray watching out for strangers in that town. See, so no way. And everybody in Ireland would know this, I would think.
Yeah. Unfortunately, even by the early 2000s, Operation Trace as a dedicated team seemed more driven by chasing newspaper and journalist inquiries and reacting to them than actually stripping away the core of the case on what did and didn't belong under their case remits. The case of Ciara Breen has never anything to do with the so-called Ireland's vanishing triangle. Yet, both Operation Trace and the media were happy for years to waltz hand in hand without any conclusion to many of the cases. We're going to take a video insert. This is actually going to be the final video insert, and this is Bernadette, and really this is about the aftermath of the case for Bernadette. So let's hear from her, and then after that, then we're going to bring the case more up to recent times.
The last time I had anyone down about anything was the new superintendent came down with one of the Gardaí to be introduced to me as Ciara's mum, and he was going to do this, that and the other, and he would keep it open, and I said thank you very much. But that was about 2.5, 3 years ago, maybe more.
The days, Bernadette, I suppose, blurred into weeks, and the weeks blurred into months, and the months
Can't believe that it's
blurred into
14 years. I really can't.
How did you feel once you realised this is serious? The guards are involved, and as it got more and more serious, what were your feelings, Bernadette?
First off, I was angry with her.
Okay.
I really was. Even though I was worried, I was angry. Why? Can you not, Secondly, that's when the fear hit in. There's something wrong. There's something very badly wrong. Ciara wouldn't do this. I kept trying to convince myself, and my father did too, no, she's out there, she's out there, she's out there. But in here I knew she wasn't. And then all of a sudden Team Trace came. And on the news
And
at
who's
6
Team
o'clock,
Trace? Tell us.
it was a team of detectives, top detectives, that was put in place to examine 6 of the girls that had disappeared.
So this is on a
to
national
see,
level.
yeah, to see if there was a connection, was there a serial killer. And I was sitting there having my cup of tea, and the headlines were Team Trace set up to find out if the 6 missing girls have been, by a serial killer. And then they started to name the names, and the last name was Ciara Breen. Well, you can imagine, I'm sitting there in my sitting room on my own.
Bernadette, had you been informed
I
of
hadn't,
this
no.
beforehand?
No.
Okay.
No.
So no one came to talk
I
to
was
you?
supposed to be informed about it from some press office, Gardaí press office person in Dublin. And they're real proud of this press office in Dublin. But no matter what's happened,
That must have
only
been
for the local Gardaí, at the time, I would have known absolutely nothing. And I phoned them screaming. Whatever poor wee guard was on the desk, God bless him, because he must have bad ears now. And, she's not dead, she's not dead, she's not dead. But they were down in my door within 10 minutes, the detectives, and they told me that they didn't know, they weren't informed either.
So the local guards, you found there was very good communication.
Fantastic.
Open lines.
You couldn't complain about them.
Okay, and it's just when it became a national issue that there was less and less liaison.
I was told that unfortunately, Mrs. Breen, Ciara is no longer yours, she's ours and everybody else's. And I just turned.
Jesus.
And the detective from here, I don't want to mention names, obviously,
Of course not.
had his hand on my shoulder going like this. And I just turned and I went, don't you ever bet on that one, because you lose. I got ill a few years ago. God gave me a very great grace of allowing me to see her again.
You were in a coma, weren't you?
I was.
Yeah.
But Ciara will always be 17.
Mm.
I've often tried to picture her older. I can't. I keep journals. And I'm sorry I got a wee bit there. And
No
little
need to be
conversations with her. And I've often looked at Deb dresses and wedding dresses and this, well, that'd be nice on her, or this would be, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I do not regret 1 second that I had with Ciara Breen.
Of course not.
A second. She was my life, is my life, and always will be. I said once in an interview, I was always known as Ciara Breen's mother. Who am I now? I've lost my whole identity. I haven't.
No.
I'm Ciara's mom, and I'm proud of it.
Mm-hmm.
For the person who either did it or knows something about it, just come forward. I don't want them particularly jailed or punished or whatever else. I just want to be able to say goodbye properly to Ciara.
Closure.
I just want to say goodbye, so I can say hello again. Sorry.
Bernadette,
You apologise and you don't have
it's
to
an
be
absolute
sorry, Bernadette.
I
honour
was
to have you
determined
here.
not to cry this morning.
And listen, you're fantastic to come and talk to us. It's an honour to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. No, thank you.
And
Yeah.
I think it's very important to, as you say, remember Ciara all the time and to just keep her in everybody's minds. And like that, the most important thing, if anybody out there knows anything at all about this, and there are people out there who do, please do the honourable and the right thing.
Could I say something to the young people?
Yes.
I know we all were young and we all thought we knew everything. Believe me, we know nothing.
Yeah.
Think of yourselves. Think of your parents.
Okay, we're at 2014. A crime call national TV alert. That's for people who are not familiar with Irish TV. It's like one of those crime line, crime call, monthly episodes that feature missing people, crimes that were committed. So this national TV alert went out. It was aired on the 15th of December 2014, requesting public assistance and information on Ciara Breen's disappearance. The appeal for more information was agreed to be aired when Gardaí received an anonymous letter 5 weeks earlier detailing and naming Liam Mullen by witness tip-offs as involved in the case and disappearance. In total, Gardaí would receive 2 such letters believed to be from the same person and someone associated and known to the suspect Liam Mullen. Details were checked and verified. Mullen's ex-girlfriends were interviewed. Some of them were aware of his relationship with Ciara and that she had been one of several teenagers he was having relationships with at the time. In 2015, on the 21st of April, Liam Mullen is arrested again and brought to Drogheda Garda station. While he wept about his situation, he once again refused to answer any questions about Ciara Breen and his relationship with her. Initially, in previous interviews, he had denied even knowing her. This claim would prove his undoing. There was a search on August the 18th, a search over 4 acres of a 16-acre bog area of reed swamp behind McHardle's Brewery in Dundalk is conducted following public tip-offs. The search follows an eyewitness report of Mullen chasing Ciara along railway tracks in the early hours of the morning of her disappearance. The search was conducted on the 9th of September without any body found. Locals would report that regularly Mullen would turn up at the site of the search during it, and Gardaí present also noted Mullen's being nearby at the time. We're going to take a very short insert of that actual search. It's really just a quick News Archive video insert. Okay, let's take a look at that. 2017 we're on to. The GSCR re-examination, that's the Garda Serious Crimes Review Unit. Newly appointed Senior Investigating Officer, Senior Detective Pat Murray directs the former Operation Trace team to hand him over all files relating to the case of Ciara Breen. They're happy to do that because many of the officers on the original team are or were retiring and had been disbanded from the case involvement. What's more disturbing about this period of time, in this case and many others, is that the new GSCR unit had to request the return of private and confidential files from the homes, attics and sheds of former senior Garda investigators who were allowed to take away critical case files from their operating offices without proper job log case file tracking. Now in the meantime, and I've touched on this with previous cases before Christmas, we have raised this matter with both the Minister for Justice and Garda Ombudsman, and have yet to receive an adequate response and update about tightened procedures within Garda investigations for subsequent cases. In other words, what was implemented in subsequent cases after this was found out. In countless cases I found this practice was actually commonplace throughout the 1980s, 1990s and 2000s. That is, critical early notes, case documents and even evidence bags not properly being impounded and secured with documented job log movement. In other words, you job log a piece of evidence, it's gathered, it's bagged, secured, it's job logged back into whatever Garda station it goes to. If it goes out to a scientific institution, it's job logged out there, it's job logged back in when it's put into the archives. Everything should be job logged, and it seems this wasn't happening. It's crazy, Kieran.
Like, whatever about them, like, I can see, like, they can keep their old files or notes or whatever. Of course, that's, like, grand. But, like, evidence in a non-secure unit, like, in someone's house, like, that's...
Well, actually, in regards Garda notes, actually, technically, certain Garda notes, if they are requested as part of a book of evidence or the archive important evidence for a trial, they have to be either copied in some way, scanned, or the actual notebook itself must be handed over. A retiring Garda can't just go, oh, they're my notebooks, I'm taking them with me. No, you can't. You sign that in your contract. They are part of your job. They're part of job logs and evidence. You can't just take them home.
No,
detectives are allowed to take evidence and examine evidence. They are allowed to take documents. That's fine, but they have to be brought back and logged back.
Chain of evidence.
It is in a chain of evidence. There is no there has to be a full chain of evidence.
Actually, that's it. I was going to say that once the evidence goes out into a private property, it breaks the chain of evidence.
It breaks the chain of evidence. It potentially can be challenged then in a court of law as well. We don't know whether this was manipulated, altered in any way. We don't know what happened it, who saw it. You know, it's crazy.
Madness.
And in the words of Senior Investigating Officer Pat Murray, who investigated the Ciara Breen case as part of his role in the GSCR unit, his words: I eventually had to go back to the original investigation team and ask them to do a bit of searching. Lo and behold, it turned up in the attic of a retired Garda. That kind of slipshod approach always drove me insane, but as ever, I had to put that to one side and get on with reviewing the case. It's just bonker stuff.
Fair play. At least someone like him was able, though, to finally be able to step into the investigation, though.
Yeah, and say, here, come on, what's going on here?
To be honest, you don't usually hear the guards calling other guards out like that in public.
No,
not at all. So.
In July 2017, now 55-year-old Liam Mullen is detained and arrested for drunk driving in Dundalk at 8:30 p.m. on an evening in July. He is also carrying drugs in his vehicle. His autopsy would later reveal a substantive amount of drugs in his body taken around the time or shortly before his arrest. Effectively, Mullen died a short time after he was in police custody of a drug overdose. 2018. The mother of Ciara Breen, Bernadette, passes away peacefully at Our Lady of Lourdes Hospital in Drogheda on June 28. Along with the passing of Liam Mullen, we will likely never know the full events of the early hours of February the 13th, 1997, when Ciara Breen disappeared. Kieran, before I get into my own final conclusions, your thoughts on where we are, and I'll come back to you then on your own final conclusions as well afterwards.
No, not to talk like it's a movie or anything, but like what an awful ending, like
Yeah.
no justice, and her poor mother,
that's yeah.
It's just no, like, so like even if they like, hopefully obviously they do find Ciara and all, but like it'll just be a posthumous conviction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that'll be all. Like,
okay, we're into the conclusions. I think we've given our reasons in this timeline why the Ciara Breen case and quite a number of other cases tied into it or linked into it are not part of the vanishing triangle and some sort of serial killer.
yeah, Mick, I was gonna ask that. Like, obviously you're 100% right that it's not linked into the vanishing triangle if there is such a thing or whatever. But why do you think the media continuously link cases like this? And say,
It sells papers, it frightens people.
Better to have like 6 victims than 4.
Yeah, it's better to have numbers. You know, it's better to have your own serial killer running around because every other country has them. Why can't we? That's the kind of nonsense the media deal in. You know, it's
and actually
it's
on
crazy.
On that topic, I was going to say, obviously, back to when we were saying that ain't no strangers going into Dundalk, so I think Larry Murphy, will just give him a mention, can be definitely eliminated from this one.
I don't think Larry would have lasted too long.
In Dundalk, no.
Obviously, we've just touched on the Garda case evidence and kind of at times the lack of proper, secure job logging of it. And as always with the media, the leaking of evidence over time, suspects being hounded, maybe becoming under more pressure not to be fulsome and honest with the Gardaí then when they finally do get pulled in, and that's another issue. So in reviewing this case, I found actually remarkable similarities with the case of Sandra Collins. We covered that case before in regards to the circumstances of the case. It's not that I believe that either cases have any culprit or suspect connection, but rather the actual modus operandi. In other words, a young vulnerable woman, perhaps somewhat shy and naive, preyed upon and used by a far older man known to her. I can't speak for Ciara or pretend to know her mind at the time of her disappearance in 1997. Her close friends and family knew her better, and even then there can be aspects none of us are aware of, even family. My thoughts? Ciara Breen was under the spell of Liam Mullen for quite some time, late 96 into 1997. Valentine's Day was just 24 hours away on the day of her disappearance. And yet, knowing the anxieties about her mother's cancer checks the following day, a meal, and then an evening on a movie with Bernadette, despite reassurances from Bernadette, Ciara still followed a repeated pattern and snuck out of the house when her mother went to bed through a downstairs window overlooking the street. What compelled her to do that? Let's remember, Bernadette expected to see her daughter home that day before she returned from Dublin. I'm left asking, was Ciara entrusted with the responsibility of the keys to the house? She had to have been, because her mother was out. She was expecting the fire lit when she got back. So Ciara clearly had access to a key to the house. So why all this need for climbing in and out windows? It's almost childlike.
Well, she is 17, so...
Yeah, Ciara was within weeks of being a legal adult. It's clear from our featured interview with Bernadette, she had set in place regimes of checking in with Ciara, dropping her to and collecting her from nights out, insisting on phone calls in regards to her movements to school and from school. I've no idea what suspect Liam Mullen told Ciara, what promises of love and plans for the future he played or preyed upon her. He had certainly plenty of practice and other liaisons at the time. but it was enough to lure Ciara out of her home in the early hours of February the 13th and to her final disappearance. Locals know what happened that night. Liam Mullen knew what happened that night, but he took the true events to his grave in 2017. Liam Mullen was afforded a grave and a final blessing. Ciara Breen and her surviving family still await that day. Beyond lightly, all the answers. Following the death of Bernadette, her brother and uncle of Ciara, Pat Coburn, continues to campaign for information leading to the recovery of his niece's body. Kieran, your final thoughts on this case?
Yeah, no, thanks. Great work on the timeline, Mick. You really covered everything there. I was going to say, I know, like, she used to sneak out of her house and all, but like, I don't get the impression she was a nasty kid at all.
No. I don't think there was a nasty bone in her body, and I think Bernadette reflects on that. Even people who Bernadette would have considered they did you wrong, or you know, they weren't nice to you. Yeah, you know, she'd be very forgiving person. You know,
at 17, I don't think many people would be quite forgiving at that age. You'd more hold grudges, you know, over stupid things at that age. So no, it's as I said before, it's a very tragic one, because it feels like in a way that he got away with this and a lot of other crimes by the sounds of things Mullen did, which is so shocking. Like, that he never, I don't think, did he ever go to prison throughout his life at all, Mullen, or anything?
I don't know whether he had a prison record. He was certainly, I'm not going to go into it here, but certainly he has previously been arrested for other things. Yeah,
so he seemed to not have, he didn't get much justice anyway.
No, I'm afraid.
No. So, and what's are the guards still, what's the current outlook on the case? Are they still searching and stuff? Or?
We're back to that old thing that we say at the end of so many timelines. Someone out there knows something. Someone out there known to either directly with Ciara, or known directly an associate or friend or ex-girlfriend of Liam Mullen knows more about what happened. It's very rare. Even the worst kind of killer, the worst kind of suspect, it's very rare that they go through and carry that for years without eventually telling someone or giving suspicion that someone that they are involved. And Mullen did that. We know there are people. He warned girlfriends who were effectively told, you know, do you want to end up like the last one?
That's lovely. But I was going to say, he doesn't come across as the brightest. Do you think he had help?
It's possible.
Yeah. I wonder, is he like, did he ever say on to anyone over the years or anything?
I'm sure I've no doubt he's definitely confided in people.
Yeah.
And it's up to those. It's up to those people to come forward.
Yeah.
Rather than sit on the information. You know, time passes. Really now, Mullen's gone. Lightly, Ciara Breen is gone. You know, look, come on, years have passed by. What have you got to lose?
Yeah, and I was gonna wonder, did she have a mobile phone? 97 would have been a bit early.
No.
How was she communicating with him then? Just meeting him on the street at certain times?
It would sound like, from what neighbours and Bernadette has spoken about in interviews, that generally, that would have been either he knew her, he clearly knew a lot of her movements, where she went to school, where she was doing her college training, so he knew where she lived, so he knew all the places to go, the sort of times, movements, that kind of. So it was, he didn't need mobile phones, he didn't need call boxes, or, you know, any day at any time he would have a pretty good. He was a predator. He knew where she'd be, and it was easy to cross her path, and that's, I'd say, where he charmed her and made arrangements then for liaisons and meetings, you know, that her mother wouldn't have been aware of.
Terrible.
Okay, everybody, that's our case. I'm hopeful that in the coming weeks, because Ciara's 27th anniversary is coming up shortly, that we might maybe have some more news, or at least the case will be placed in the media attention, a little bit more, and we'll see what comes of that. And as always, if there are any updates, I'll try and bring them to you. So thank you for joining myself and Kieran for episode 41 of Radio Espial. Take care and God bless to everybody. Okay, we'll talk to you again soon.